Have you ever felt that life keeps pushing you into the same corner, no matter how hard you try to escape? You promise yourself you'll change, next week, next month, next year, but somehow you end up back in the same place. Maybe you've changed jobs, moved cities, started fresh relationships, yet the same patterns seem to follow you like a shadow. Picture this. You finally get an opportunity you've been waiting for, a chance to speak up in a meeting, to take the lead on a project, to show what you're capable of. But instead of stepping forward, you hesitate. You second guess. You tell yourself, it's not the right time. Maybe later. And later never comes. On the surface, it looks like bad luck or timing. But beneath it, there's something more unsettling. Something you might not want to admit. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the greatest obstacle in your life isn't the economy, your boss, your partner, or the world. It's you. Not because you're weak or incapable, but because somewhere deep down, you've built invisible walls around yourself. And those walls feel so familiar, so safe, that you don't even notice they're there. Self-sabotage rarely announces itself. It doesn't look like destruction. It looks like small delays, quiet doubts, and perfectly reasonable excuses. It's the voice that says, I'll start when I'm ready, even though ready never arrives. It's the subtle way we protect ourselves from risk, by pretending we're protecting ourselves from failure. But here's the question you need to ask yourself today. What if the life you want is already within reach and the only person stopping you is the one you see in the mirror? If you've ever wondered why your progress feels like 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, stay with me. Because by the end of this journey, you might see your choices and yourself in a completely different light. And before we go further, tell me in the comments, have you ever caught yourself holding back, even when you knew it was your moment? Your story might be the spark someone else needs to break their own cycle. And if you want to keep uncovering these hidden patterns, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because what we're about to uncover can change more than just your perspective. It can change your life. What if tomorrow morning you woke up and every invisible brake you've been pressing on was gone? Imagine sitting down to work without the constant whisper of "you're not ready yet." Imagine walking into a room without scanning for reasons you might fail before you've even started. Picture yourself finally making the call you've been avoiding, sending the proposal you've rewritten a dozen times, or starting the project you've been researching for months. You feel that rush of clarity, not because the world suddenly became easier, but because you stopped playing against yourself. Here's the thing. We often imagine change as this dramatic, cinematic event, a single breakthrough moment where everything shifts. But in reality, the transformation is quieter. It happens when you choose over and over again not to betray your own potential. I want you to see it clearly. Your life as it could be if self-sabotage wasn't in the driver's seat. Would you be healthier because you finally kept your commitments to yourself? Would your relationships be deeper because you stopped pushing people away when they got too close? Would your career take a leap forward because you acted on your ideas instead of letting them gather dust? Let's go even deeper. How would it feel to trust yourself fully? To know that when you say you'll do something, you will. That you're no longer the unreliable friend in your own life? There's a kind of freedom most people never taste, not because it's impossible, but because it requires us to confront the uncomfortable truth that we've been the jailer and the prisoner all along. And here's the secret. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is rarely as wide as it looks. Often it's just a series of small moments where you choose courage over comfort, action over hesitation. So let yourself imagine it. A life where your inner critic is no longer running the show, where your fears are acknowledged but not obeyed. If that feels impossible right now, stay with me, because in the next step, we're going to break a myth that's been quietly keeping you stuck for years. We've been told a lie so often that it feels like common sense. When the time is right, you'll know. Sounds reassuring, doesn't it? Like there's a perfect moment waiting for you and all you have to do is recognize it. But here's the problem. If you believe that, you'll wait forever. Life rarely hands you the perfect set of circumstances neatly wrapped in clarity. More often it gives you uncertainty, mess, and a choice. Act now or stay where you are. Waiting to feel ready is like waiting for a storm to pass before you learn to swim. You'll drown in hesitation. Self-sabotage thrives in that waiting room. It disguises itself as patience, preparation, even wisdom. You tell yourself, "I'm just gathering more information," but deep down, you're gathering more fear. You imagine you're protecting yourself from failure, but in truth, you're protecting yourself from growth. Here's the disruptive insight. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It's a result. You don't become confident first and then take action. You take action, and confidence grows from the proof that you can survive the unknown. Think about it. Every major turning point in your life, did you feel completely prepared for it? Or did you step forward with shaky hands, only to realize later that you were more capable than you thought? The danger of the perfect moment myth is that it keeps you comfortable and stuck. Comfort is seductive. It tells you that nothing bad will happen here. But it forgets to mention that nothing extraordinary will happen here either. This is why some people live the same year 50 times and call it a life. They wait for certainty, not realizing that certainty is built through movement, not contemplation. If you recognize yourself in this, here's the challenge. The next time you catch yourself waiting for the right time, take that as your cue to act instead. Not recklessly, but decisively. Because growth doesn't arrive with a polite knock. It breaks down the door when you stop guarding it. And in the next part, we'll bring in the voice of someone who understood this truth long before self-help books existed. Someone whose insight might just dismantle the way you see hesitation. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, once wrote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." He wasn't speaking from a comfortable desk or an ideal life. He was writing from the memory of humanity's darkest conditions. And still, he understood something that most of us overlook. Your inner stance matters more than your outer situation. Frankl's insight dismantles one of our favorite excuses. I can't change until my circumstances change. If anyone had the right to believe that, it was him. Yet he realized that the most critical battles are fought inside us, where no one else can see. The enemy, more often than not, is the quiet pattern of surrender we allow to grow within. When you're sabotaging yourself, you don't feel like you're throwing your life away. You feel like you're being careful. You call it realistic. You tell yourself you're waiting for a sign, for better timing, for proof that it's safe to move. But Frankl's experience reminds us that the search for meaning, the decision to live fully, is not dependent on perfect conditions. Let's bring this into the everyday. Imagine you're in a job you don't love, a relationship that drains you, or a habit that chips away at your self-respect. You tell yourself you'll make a change when you feel certain it's the right move. But here's the truth Frankl forces us to face. You can choose your direction before the conditions approve of it. Purpose is not something you stumble upon. It's something you assign to the very next step you take. And this is where philosophy meets practice. Frankl's logotherapy teaches that we are not primarily driven by pleasure or power, but by meaning. If you're not moving toward what gives your life meaning, you'll unconsciously create obstacles to avoid confronting that emptiness. That's self-sabotage in its most camouflaged form. So the question is, if meaning doesn't depend on perfect circumstances, what's your real reason for waiting? And if a man in a concentration camp could find purpose in the midst of suffering, what excuse truly holds up for the rest of us? In the next part, we'll pull back the curtain on the subtle, invisible patterns that quietly guide your choices. Patterns so ingrained, you might not even realize they've been steering your life all along. Most people imagine self-sabotage as dramatic, a sudden collapse, a big mistake, a reckless choice that ruins everything. But in reality, it's far quieter. It works like a silent machine running in the background of your life, shaping your decisions without your conscious consent. One of its favorite tools? The micro-delay. You think, I'll send that email after lunch. Lunch becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Soon the moment has passed, the opportunity evaporates, and you tell yourself it wasn't that important anyway. But the truth is, these tiny delays accumulate into a life of missed chances. Another tool, emotional rerouting. You feel a spark of excitement about a new idea, But instead of acting on it, you overthink it until the energy drains away. You convince yourself you need more information, more planning, more time. What you really needed was to take the first small step when the fire was still burning. And perhaps the most dangerous pattern of all is identity anchoring. You've repeated certain beliefs about yourself for so long that they've become invisible laws. I'm just not disciplined. I've never been good with money. I'm the kind of person who gives up. These aren't facts. They're self-imposed ceilings. And because they feel familiar, you mistake them for truth. Here's the psychological twist. The mind is built to preserve what feels safe, not necessarily what is good for you. If chaos and self-limitation have been your normal, your mind will protect them as if they were essential to survival. This is why you can know what you need to do and still avoid doing it. It's not a lack of knowledge, it's a clash between your conscious goals and your unconscious comfort zone. Think of it like a thermostat. You can try to raise the temperature of your life with ambition and action, but if your inner settings are programmed for just enough, the moment you start to rise, the system kicks in to cool things down. This is the machinery we need to rewire. And in the next part, we'll use sharp, concise truths, cutting through the noise to break those old settings and give you phrases that can reframe your entire approach to action and risk. Sometimes you don't need another explanation. You need a sentence that hits so hard it leaves no room for excuses. These are the phrases that stay in your head long after you've heard them, the ones that come back to you in the exact moment you're about to slip into your old habits. Here are a few you might need to remember. If you wait until you're ready, you'll wait forever. Comfort will cost you more than courage ever will. Every delay is a decision. You're just pretending it's not. You can't win a fight you keep postponing. Familiar isn't the same as safe. It's just predictable. Each of these is like a mental lever. Pull it, and your perspective shifts instantly. You can feel the truth in them, even if part of you resists it. That resistance is the point. It's the sign you're touching a nerve. Here's why these phrases matter. Your brain loves shortcuts. The more complex a thought, the easier it is to rationalize your way around it. But a sharp, concise statement doesn't give you room to negotiate. It forces you to confront the reality you've been avoiding. Imagine catching yourself saying, "I'll start tomorrow," and immediately hearing, "Every delay is a decision." Suddenly, you're not in a vague, harmless pause. You're making an active choice to stay where you are. That shift in framing changes everything. It's not about shaming yourself. It's about clarity. You can't change what you refuse to see. And sometimes the fastest way to see clearly is to strip the truth down to a single, undeniable line. The real power of these phrases isn't in reading them, it's in using them as interrupts. The moment you notice yourself slipping into hesitation, you drop one into your own mind like a challenge. If it stings, it's working. In the next part, we're going to lean into paradox, to explore how the very instincts you believe are protecting you might actually be the ones holding you hostage, and how what feels like safety can sometimes be the most dangerous place to live. Here's the strange truth. The things you believe are keeping you safe may be the very things quietly destroying your potential. Safety feels good in the short term. It's the warm blanket you pull over yourself when the world feels cold. But stay wrapped in it too long, and you stop noticing that it's also keeping you from moving at all. Think about it. Comfort and danger are not opposites. In fact, comfort can be one of the most dangerous states to live in because it doesn't trigger alarms. Pain tells you something is wrong. Fear warns you of risk. But comfort? Comfort whispers, everything is fine, even when everything is slowly shrinking around you. Here's the paradox. True safety doesn't come from avoiding risk. It comes from building the strength to face it. You feel safer crossing a shaky bridge not because the bridge has changed, but because you've learned how to walk steadily on it. Avoidance might make you feel secure for a while, but it leaves you unprepared for the real challenges that will eventually come. This is why people often stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, or habits that keep them small. It's not because they're blind to the problems, it's because the known pain feels less threatening than the unknown. The mind mistakes predictable for safe, when in reality, it's just familiar. Here's the uncomfortable flip side. Risk and growth are not enemies either. The moment you take a risk aligned with your values, You step into a kind of security you can't get any other way. The security of knowing you can trust yourself to act. That's the safety worth chasing. So, the paradox is simple. By clinging to what feels safe, you may be walking deeper into danger. By stepping into what feels risky, you might be securing the very foundation you've been missing. In the next part, we'll take this insight and turn it into something more tangible. We'll look at the real personal rewards that come when you stop sabotaging yourself and why they're worth every ounce of discomfort you'll face getting there. Imagine for a moment that you stopped interrupting your own progress, that every time you promised yourself you'd do something, you actually followed through. What would that feel like? Not just in the big, cinematic moments, but in the quiet, ordinary ones. First, there's the emotional payoff. Trust in yourself. Most people underestimate how much inner peace comes from simply keeping your own word. When you stop breaking promises to yourself, your confidence stops being fragile. It becomes a fact you can rely on. You no longer need constant external validation because you've built an internal track record you believe in. Then there's momentum. Progress has a compounding effect. The more you act, the easier it becomes to act again. You start seeing results, not just in outcomes, but in how you think. Your default shifts from hesitation to engagement, from can I to how will I. And with that shift, the world responds differently to you. Opportunities seem to appear more often, not because the world has changed, but because you finally stopped hiding from them. Relationships deepen too. When you're no longer carrying the quiet shame of unfulfilled potential, you show up differently for others. You listen more, connect more, and inspire trust, not by being perfect, but by being consistent. People can feel when someone has stopped fighting themselves, and it makes them want to be around you. There's also a subtle but powerful shift in identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That identity fuels future decisions. You start to choose paths that match your new standard, not your old limitations. And here's the part most people don't expect: joy. Not the fleeting kind that comes from a lucky break, but the deeper joy of alignment, when your actions and your intentions are finally on the same page. These are the rewards waiting beyond self-sabotage. They're not reserved for the exceptional. They're the natural byproduct of living without constantly tripping yourself up. In the next part, we'll go even deeper, anchoring everything we've discussed so far into a solid philosophical and psychological framework. So this doesn't just feel like inspiration, but a structure you can actually build your life on. Everything we've explored so far, awareness of self-sabotage, confronting the myths, embracing risk, can feel powerful in the moment. But without a deeper structure, the pull of old habits will quietly reclaim its territory. That's why we need a framework, a way to anchor change so it doesn't drift away when motivation fades. Philosophically, we can borrow from the realist tradition, particularly the thought of Aristotle and later St. Thomas Aquinas. The idea that human flourishing, eudaimonia, is achieved not through fleeting emotions, but through the cultivation of virtue. In this view, the question isn't, how do I feel about doing this, but is this the kind of action that shapes me into who I want to become? Psychologically, Viktor Frankl's logotherapy offers a complementary lens. Our primary drive is not pleasure or avoidance of pain, but the pursuit of meaning. And meaning, crucially, is not found. It is assigned. That means you don't wait for life to hand you a purpose. You decide what matters and live accordingly, even in uncertainty. When you combine these two principles, self-sabotage stops being a mysterious force and becomes a recognizable misalignment. You're choosing actions that contradict the virtues you want to cultivate and the meaning you claim to value. You avoid the difficult step, not because you can't take it, but because in the moment, comfort masquerades as priority. The framework, then, is simple but demanding. 1. Identify the virtues you want to embody: courage, discipline, generosity, integrity. 2. Clarify the meaning you're assigning to your current season of life. 3. Let both virtue and meaning, not mood, dictate your next action. When you operate this way, hesitation loses its power. You no longer need to feel ready because your compass isn't your comfort, it's your character. And character, once committed, doesn't wait for ideal conditions to act. The beauty of this approach is that it scales. Whether it's a small decision like making a call you've been avoiding, or a life-altering one, like leaving a toxic environment, you run it through the same filter. Does this action align with my virtues and serve my meaning? If yes, you move. In the final part, we'll bring this full circle, with a call not just to think differently, but to step into a community of people who are ready to stop sabotaging and start living on purpose. If you've stayed with me until now, it's because something in these words has struck a nerve. Maybe you've recognized patterns you've been avoiding for years. Maybe you've seen how your careful waiting has really been slow-motion surrender. Or maybe, for the first time, you've allowed yourself to imagine a life where you are no longer the one holding the leash. Here's what I want you to take with you. Change doesn't start with a grand leap. It starts with the smallest act of defiance against the version of you that plays it safe. It's sending the email today, making the phone call today, saying the hard thing today, not because you feel fearless, but because fear is no longer the one making your choices. Self-sabotage loses its grip the moment you choose alignment over comfort. The moment you decide that your virtues, your meaning, and your integrity matter more than temporary ease. That decision doesn't just shift your actions, it shifts who you are becoming. But here's the truth. Doing this alone is harder than it needs to be. That's why this space exists, not as another echo chamber of empty motivation, but as a gathering of people committed to living on purpose. People who understand that the work is hard but worth it. People who hold each other accountable, not out of judgment, but out of belief in what's possible. So I'll leave you with this challenge. In the comments, name one way you've caught yourself sabotaging your own life, and one step you're willing to take this week to break that pattern. Not someday. This week. Your words might be the push someone else needs, and theirs might be the push you need when doubt comes knocking again. If this conversation has stirred something in you, don't just let it fade into another passing insight. Like this video, subscribe, and stay connected, because the next time you feel that old urge to hold back, you'll need a reminder that you're not alone in this fight. The life you want won't wait for you forever. The question is, are you ready to stop waiting for it?